What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from Pink Tourmaline. And today, I want to revisit a video that I used and created excerpts from for a previous video on this channel talking about suffering. But it's funny the perspective shift I've had since I made this original video. So I wanted to go back to this interview from the Next Level Soul podcast and think about this one more time because I'm looking at it in a completely different way. And when I first made this video, I would say I didn't even know what New Age was, but that was, I think, where my head was at, buying into the authenticity of the NDEs. And again, I'm not saying that they're fabricated, but buying into the fact that they were sincere as opposed to manipulative potentially. And that what we were hearing from the NDEs were really telling us, hey, this is how it is, and this is why certain things are happening. And so I listened to this video, and the theme of it was how great suffering is for us and how beautiful it is because it ultimately awakens us. Now, I actually felt a connection to this idea because I was just going through something really traumatic and traumatizing in my life that had caused me intense suffering. And I remembered thinking, and this is a way to comfort myself as I was going through it, as I know this has got to end someday, hopefully. And when this does end, I know I'm going to be stronger for it because every difficult thing that has happened to me in my life, breakups, whatever it might be, failures, things that just caused me so much pain, I never look back and say, man, I wish I could redo that. I never do that. We never do that. I think most of us, unless you're just obsessing over something, right? But I think the vast majority of us, come away from it with all this knowledge and all this experience. And or maybe it's not the majority of us, actually. Let me backtrack on that. But regardless, at least I feel like for me, I've never said I wish that relationship didn't end, or I wish that this didn't happen, because I always come out after going through that pain being like, oh my God, I just leveled up. I just got stronger. I just got more intelligent. I just got more savvy. And so I was thinking at that time, I know I'm going to feel like this after this whole ordeal ends. And it's true. I did. And I don't regret that whole tumultuous experience. And so when I heard this idea that, man, we should actually almost be grateful for the suffering, it really resonated with me. And I thought, man, that's absolutely right. That's how we grow, and that's how we learn. That's how we level up. But I don't know anymore. And now, as I look back on this video and everything I've learned since, and thinking about this idea of suffering, I think it's a wonderful narrative to implant in our minds to get us thinking this way, because it allows us to then, or it motivates us then, to sign off on a lot of the negative things or bad things that happen in our life. And the reason why obviously this is potentially dangerous is because if we are indeed in a reality where suffering does not happen just by accident, but it is actually a essential part of the system, whereby the suffering is actually generating the product that is integral to the system and basically the whole purpose of the system, then we see that falling into this mindset of the New Age mindset of, hey, like, we should be grateful for suffering, actually is just a beautiful way for us to keep complying with the system. So definitely am revisiting and rethinking this whole thought process of being grateful for it. Now, if we do talk about the growth that we do achieve from suffering, and I don't think everybody achieves the same growth. I don't think it's everybody. But I think instead of being grateful for suffering, I think what we should be grateful for is ourselves, and is our resilience and our ability to bounce back, which maybe not everybody currently possesses. But that's what we should be grateful for. The fact that we can pick ourselves up. That's not the suffering that we need to be thankful for. It's us. And that's the empowering part. There's a saying, I don't know if this exactly connects, but there's a saying that when a bird lands on a tree branch, it's not putting its faith in the branch that the branch won't break. It's putting its faith in itself, that if the branch does break, his wings are strong enough to catch him and let him fly to another branch. And it's kind of like that. We don't say thank you to the broken branch as the bird. We say, no, thank you to having the resilience to pop up. And if we don't pop up well, then the branch is not, so we don't have nothing to be so grateful about that branch. So ultimately, it's funny, this mindset not only can empower this system that very well may be harvesting energy from us, and just a big sick system that we are now being compliant with if we accept suffering. It's not only that, but it's also taking away power from ourselves, saying, oh, thank you to this terrible thing, versus no, thank you to ourselves. Thank you to our own inner strength, and recognizing the power that is inherent in us. I'm starting to think more and more that's what we got to recognize. And we just need to acknowledge that power in ourselves and in each other. It just feels like the key more and more. Okay, let's go back through this video with fresh eyes, with a new perspective. This is an interview on the Next Level Soul podcast of a gentleman named Daniel Joseph Gobin, who is a spiritual author and researcher of truth, who teaches the mystical wisdom of his master, Das Kalos, focusing on humanity's spiritual evolution, reincarnation, and the nature of reality, popularized through his Whale series books, You Are the Whale, presenting experiential knowledge from decades of study and practice in Eastern and Western mysticism. I feel like I've heard this title. Okay, so first of all, let's play this first clip. Again, if you watch my original video, when I listen to this, it's not that it doesn't make sense. It does, but the greater relevance of it on us, maybe in like this individual life, certainly it can do positive things, but it's probably more credit to us than the suffering. But then the greater significance, now I'm having many more doubts about that. But let's listen to this clip and then we're going to react.
There's a concept that suffering is necessary for awakening.
Mm.
Is that an illusion of the lower self, or is that true that there has to be a certain amount of suffering to awaken?
I think it's true. I think it is true. But,
Why?
because we got to wake up. We're in this dream. It's like somebody slapping you in the face. Wake up, snap out of it. Life does that to you, especially when you get stuck, right? Something will come along and it'll smack you and shake you. And you start to, well, what was that? Why am I doing that? So suffering really serves to help wake up the person if, and only if, they respond to it correctly. And if they, oh, poor me, oh, I'm a victim again, they lose right that one.
And they're going to have to go through it again.
Okay. So suffering is waking us up. Now, again, is that the purpose of suffering? Is suffering built into our lives or built into the system for our benefit to wake us up? Or is it that we're constantly enduring barbs and different pieces of suffering? In some cases, it happens to stimulate an awakening, and it varies from person to person. I'm sure a lot of people don't wake up from the suffering and don't have these revelations or epiphanies, right? But and again, it's a beautiful way to look at it. We can always extract positives out of positive situations and negative situations. But I think it's just funny now looking back on it, saying that we need this to be woken up. Not necessarily. I don't think we need, I think waking up is less about enduring pain and suffering. It's more about unplugging from the system. It's more about getting away from the distraction. Sometimes a big bout of pain or suffering can get us to unplug temporarily. We sit in our beds maybe and cry for days or weeks or months or whatever it may be. And so we're not filling our brain with all the distractions. I mean, I think that could for sure push us into an awakening. But is that the necessary piece that needs to slap us? Like, that logic doesn't connect to me anymore. And I think I signed off on it the first time I watched it. But the more I think about it, it doesn't make so much sense. And then again, what is this awakening? If we're talking about reincarnation every time with a memory wipe, we awaken from the suffering, but then we go back to sleep because we're wiped again. And then we awaken and then we go back to sleep. Like, where is this going? What do we just need? Constant awakenings throughout the reincarnation cycle? And you know what I'm saying? It's not really adding up. And it's funny because I thought it did when I first listened to this. Okay. Next, this is the part that when I first heard it, I was like, man, it's deep. And even this gentleman who runs the Next Level Soul podcast felt the same way. Man, this is really deep. Wow, that one really hits hard. But I don't know. Now it feels really, really hollow. And not only that, he gives this quote and he attributes it to somebody. All right, we're gonna talk about all that. Let me play the clip first, and then we'll talk about it.
It's cold. It's nothing but suffering in the real world. When he awakens to what the reality and the truth is, it's all pure suffering until he learns to transcend it. And then he becomes an awakened one. He becomes a master eventually, where he can then control both worlds. He can go
Mhm.
into the matrix and play with it and manipulate it. And then he
He's talking about Neo in the movie The Matrix, just FYI.
starts to be able to do that in the real world as well. So it's such a, and I don't want to go down a matrix rabbit hole because I could talk about matrix for hours and hours, but does that make sense as far as what we're talking about?
I'd say sure. And there's some master, it might have even been Christ, but I can't say for sure, who said, if you knew what your suffering did for you, you would pray that it never stopped.
Oh, what
It's a heavy one, isn't it?
Ooh, that hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh man, that's powerful. Because if you look at your life, anytime you've grown, anytime you've made a big step forward, there's been suffering. There's been challenges. There's been adversity. That's what tests you. That's what tests your mettle. That is what makes you the samurai sword and not the kitchen knife.
I mean, right. And I've experienced that. So I get that point that you can rise up from the challenges, and kind of if you lead a life where you don't necessarily push yourself. But again, this is all within reason, right? What are we talking about? Challenges and adversity. I mean, we were talking about horrendous things happening to people, really, truly horrendous things. I've had a pretty blessed and lucky life. Like I haven't had major hardships, not I think anywhere to the level that many people have experienced, and yes, it's true that I think relative levels of hardship spur us onwards, but what about these horrendous, horrible things that often leave people completely crushed and devastated? Like that, it just doesn't really add up on the grand scale of things. And plus, on top of that, where are we putting the thanks? I feel like the message here is we're praying that the suffering never ends. No, we're praying for the strength within us to keep rising above whatever is happening all around us, right? It's like taking away this credit that we should be giving to ourselves, or maybe the people around us that are spurring us forward, and we're giving it to suffering. It's so weird. And then on top of that, if you knew what suffering does for us, like now I looked at that statement as profound the first time I heard it, and now it just feels sick. If we would pray that the suffering never ends. I mean, what more of a fitting statement would that be for those who want to keep the suffering going, or for those who are in control and maybe are ruling authoritatively in a way that is inducing suffering and pain everywhere else? It's just a slap-on statement of compliancy that if people adopted, they would just sign off and continue to sign off on everything that's going on. Now, more importantly, he says that, hey, a master said this. I think this is Christ. I tried to look up the statement because I'm like, who said this? I want to know who actually said this. Who do we attribute to this? Then I Googled this and I looked at ChatGPT, and this is the response. This quote is most likely from just Daniel Joseph Gobin. Now, maybe I haven't done deep enough research, okay? I did do this mode in the think mode, and I also looked on Google, got absolutely nothing. But he said, repeating something he had heard from a, quote, spiritual master, but does not give firm attribution. And then it literally, I mean, I didn't even talk about Next Level Soul podcast. I didn't say anything. It just says that Daniel Master said, there's some master. It might have even been literally the quote, but I can't say for sure who's. I did not feed any of this into chat. If you knew what your suffering did for you, you would pray that it would never stop. So the honest answer is Daniel Joseph Gobin popularized it, said it in that interview, but he attributes it vaguely to an unnamed master, but he admits he isn't sure. So there it is. There's no attribution. And I think the more that I think about it, I feel silly that I was fooled in the profundity. Is that the right word? Profundity of this statement. But I think obviously now where I'm at and what I've learned, this is just kind of and I'm not saying this guy's a twisted individual. I think he's trying to just preach and explain what he believes is legit and try and help people. Like, I don't think there's a nefarious intent behind it, but sadly, I think a lot of things on this planet get spread by us, the people who should be helping each other. We kind of get manipulated or coerced into spreading things that maybe we believe are the right thing to spread, but unfortunately we're serving a greater system of negativity, and that's just kind of how it goes. We just gotta remember we're all on the same team here and try to do things the right way. But it can happen to any of us. It can happen to me, happen to you. So we just have to be mindful of all of this. Now we get to this next quote. He says, there are only two paths. It kind of going to the broader purpose of how, like, what life is about in terms of this idea in the new age of spiritual evolution and elevating. But yeah, it just doesn't hit the same way now that where I'm at with all the research and everything I've learned in the last several months. But we're going to play it and we're going to respond.
It's like taking it on the chin all the time. Or the other one is through reason, where you really introspect on what's happening, you play it through, and you start to see it, and you can avoid some of those sufferings and pitfalls. It's not mandatory. And it has to do with how attached we are to our illusions and our ignorance.
That's a really important one. How attached we are to our illusions. Can you dive in a little bit to that?
Sure. It's just like I was saying, your wife leaves your business partner cheats you. You had this illusion they were something else, but the world woke you up to the truth. Well, that was painful.
So I get that. It wakes you up to the truth. I understand that. And that is often, I mean, that's a beautiful way to look at these negative things, because when they happen, they happen. You can't undo it. I feel exactly the same way. But if we're looking at a broader purpose or the broader scope of what's happening in the New Age paradigm, where these are awakenings or lessons for your spirit to grow and evolve, and then you're learning these things, but then ultimately go up, wiped clean, tabula rasa, and you repeat. All your knowledge is gone. I mean, unless you're saying there's some signature of the knowledge somewhere, but and it's not meant to be present to you. But then why do you have to go through this process of once again awakening again via suffering? Boom, boom, boom. We have this beautiful awakening. Boom, we pass, wiped, repeat. Like what is that? What is that point? You know, are we just trying to keep? I think what the New Age philosophy or the idea is that you keep repeating until you can kind of come away with a clean, I guess, karmic balance sheet, and then you no longer have to keep repeating. But I feel like this logic is flawed, because I think it's effectively impossible living on this planet, which for reasons that I've mentioned before, even if we try to not impact anybody negatively to the best of our ability, just by existing, we are consuming air, we are consuming water. Even if we're consuming plant matter, we're destroying, we're doing things, we're leaving an imprint. And I mean, I'm talking in some ideal situation, some perfect existence, it still wouldn't be perfect. And I think there's always something then you might have to, balance out or could be held accountable for. And I think that's the whole trick of the system, is that nobody, if you play into it and you buy into that idea, go into the life review and see the things you did wrong and right and whatever, it's never going to be a perfect clean slate. So there's always going to be something to say, well, yeah, but like you were breathing and the CO2 that you output had a net effect here, and then it caused these bugs to die, which caused this to happen. Like there's always something I feel that this system has inherently built in that can hold you accountable for. So I don't know. It just doesn't stack up whatsoever to me anymore in terms of the broader scope or the broader purpose of this. If we're saying that effectively each of these experiences are for our own personal development and growth. But it does seem like a good way to manipulate people to keep staying in the cycle and keep having some sort of collective purpose, not for us, but for some external force that is utilizing something that we might be admitting. Now, he gets more into this idea of potentially the purpose of life. And I think there is actually some truth in this from everything that I've been researching and talking about. Again, this recognition of the higher self or realizing self. We talked about that in, I think, one of the videos when I was going through the Upanishads and talking about Sergeant Schultz and that YouTube channel, that this is the way to potentially exit the matrix system, to exit the system and be able to exit the system and to avoid the manipulation. Obviously, he describes in different terms that, hey, we're on this constant journey to keep realizing ourselves. But so anyways, there's overlaps here. There's something to what he's saying. But again, I think he's approaching it from a different perspective.
First one is probably the biggest one, is that what we're seeking is outside of ourselves. Everybody goes on the guru hunt. I did. You read something in a book and you keep thinking, if I'm going to get there, I'm going to find this thing. It turns out the seeker is the sought. You know what I'm saying? The thing that you are is what you're really seeking. And the other side of it is that thing in you, that higher self, if you want to call it that, is seeking you. So it's really a very nice match once you realize it. And the other one is I feel very strongly about, is that we get this concept we're spiritually developing. And that's just not true. I mean, it feels that way to the personality, but really what it is an awakening. You mentioned the awakening. It's a realization. That's why I call it self-realization. You're not realizing the personality self, you're realizing the inner self, this higher.
And you know what's funny? He said it right there. We're not spiritually developing. That's actually not true. This goes back and bolsters the idea that if that is a myth, I don't even think these guys or the hosts of the show caught this, but if we're not actually spiritually developing and we're just reconnecting with the realization of self, our true self that doesn't need this spiritual development, then what are we doing? Then what is this? So in fact, it's not as though this is our purpose of the continued reincarnations and revisiting the earth, but it's just simply, he's saying we don't need to spiritually develop. And in fact, this realization of self, he's not saying it, but this is what I'm kind of piecing together from what other people have said. It seems that this realization of self goes back to the idea that we don't need the spiritual development. And once we make this realization, boom, we have our path to exit if we so choose. So anyways, there it is. The main broad theme of this video, as we kind of touch on some different concepts that are very interesting, touch on this idea of the purpose of life, maybe how some of this stuff merges even with the new theories and philosophies that I've been covering, even with what he's saying, but ultimately coming back and revisiting this idea of, does suffering really awaken us? I mean, anything can awaken us, but it's us that's awakening us, right? Not the suffering. And also, is the suffering something that we should truly be grateful for? I mean, look, ultimately, if it has happened and is in the past and we have grown from it, certainly let's move forward and let's not sit back and just be negative or be victims about what we've endured. So absolutely, I'm not saying we do that, but we can obviously be grateful for the growth that we experience. But is this a reason to now invite suffering into our lives and into our worlds? I would say absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, he even says too, you can learn in other ways via logic and just through work and grit and determination and focus, which absolutely you can. So there's my clarification. There's my revisiting of this. Yeah, it's a dangerous statement. It's a dangerous statement to say something like that, oh man, if we just knew how much it did for us, we would pray that the suffering never stops. Like it actually gives me the creeps now that revisiting that quote, and definitely not something that we should pray for to never end. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Well, that's all I got for you guys in this one. Thank you guys so much for joining. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think of this interview? What do you think of this gentleman? What do you think of this whole podcast, the Next Level Soul podcast? By the way, this is a place where I used to watch a lot of NDEs when I was first getting into all of this stuff. Now, obviously, I don't really feel myself in alignment with a lot of the philosophies and a lot of the guests that are discussed on the show anymore. I don't really watch it anymore. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that the show is basically completely new age aligned and sort of out of alignment with what a lot of people are looking for or seeking on this channel? Or do you feel like there's still some really good stuff and some certain individuals that are very much worth listening to on the show, which I do think there are definitely some interviews that I've looked at and they have some very interesting information, but I'd just be curious to know your thoughts of this podcast, which has gotten very massive. Next Level Soul podcast, over 1 million subscribers. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for joining. We'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.